Hi everyone. So the other day I saw the documentary The Game Changers on Netflix, and it's fantastic. I recommend you all go and watch. The documentary focuses on the health and athletic benefits of the vegan diet, and they featured a lot of vegan athletes in the documentary. And apparently Joe Rogan also saw this documentary, and he was pretty triggered by it, triggered enough to go on a long ramble on one of his recent podcast episodes about how a vegan diet is terrible for your health. Most people quit after a short period of time. The Game Changers documentary was terrible. So we're just going to rebut each of Joe Rogan's claims point by point.
They're just trying to be activists. They're trying to get a message out. And most of them will quit. They're going to quit veganism and they're going to start eating meat again because of their health.
Yeah.
That's the truth. It's some ridiculous number. Google this. What number? I think they said the number of vegans and vegetarians that eat meat when they're drunk is something outrageous. It's like close to 90%.
Yeah. Well, no
But
kidding.
how many vegans wind up quitting and eating meat? I wonder if they've ever done a study on that.
So Joe is confusing two studies here. There was a recent study that found about a third of vegetarians end up eating meat when they're drunk, which is not too surprising to me. I don't particularly like most vegetarians. They tend to be hypocrites and very flaky people. And there was a much earlier Funalytics study which found 84% of vegetarians and vegans end up quitting their diet and going back to eating animal products. Now, it seems that Joe is trying to argue that the vast majority of people who are vegan right now will eventually quit their diet and go back to eating meat, and he's referring to the Funalytics study as evidence. Well, if you actually take a look at the Funalytics study, there was no vegan subgroup. They only combined vegans and vegetarians together to get their numbers. So claiming that the Funalytics study shows that the vast majority of vegans quit their diet is dishonest. There was no vegan subgroup. And on top of that, if you actually look at the data they collected, 58% of current vegans and vegetarians in their study had been vegan and vegetarian for more than 10 years. So obviously this diet is pretty sustainable for the majority of people. Also, 34% of former vegans and vegetarians quit before making it 3 months on the diet, with 53% of former vegetarians and vegans quitting before even making it a year on the diet. And 18% of former vegetarians and vegans quit between 1 and 2 years on the diet. That means, all these numbers totaled up, 71%, the vast majority of people who quit a vegan or vegetarian diet, do so within 2 years. So chances are, if you can follow a vegan or vegetarian diet for more than 2 years, you will make a very long-term commitment to these diets. So this argument that, most people quit a vegan or vegetarian diet, it's not sustainable, well, that's not true. If you actually take a look at the Funalytics research, these diets are quite sustainable, and as long as you make a commitment to them, you can follow them for a very long period of time.
This is like a big thing because, there's been a movement, sort of a movement, and people have different success rates with being a vegan. But Cam Newton, who is a quarterback of the Carolina Panthers, big dude, 6'6", 250, 260, he went vegan and he cannot get healthy. He's been injured. The face of the franchise, probably $100 million contract. Made it to the Super Bowl, but since just been on a decline, and it's like almost hand in hand with the change into vegan.
So this is just a ridiculous double standard. For one thing, Cam Newton isn't the only vegan NFL football player. There are plenty others. The Tennessee Titans, that one team alone, has 12 players currently following a vegan diet, including Derek Morgan. They were featured in the documentary film The Game Changers. So why aren't you talking about them? Why are you only focusing on Cam Newton and attributing his injuries and issues to his vegan diet, but you're ignoring all of the other players that are following a vegan diet and doing just fine? It's almost as if you're dishonest liars who are trying to paint a narrative that, suits your bias. And secondly, again, ridiculous double standard. There are tons of injuries in pro football. You can actually go to websites with a list of current NFL football injuries, and the list is staggeringly long. There are hundreds of players currently who are so badly injured they can't even play, and I'm going to guess most of these players aren't vegan. This is just so typical of Joe Rogan. When meat-eating athletes get injured and don't perform well, he just ignores it, but when a vegan athlete gets injured and doesn't perform well, it must be the vegan diet. Just because of that one lifestyle choice, he attributes every bad thing that could possibly be happening to them to their diet. Imagine if we use that same line of reasoning in our daily lives.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, damn, Clint, you're still sick? I swear it's gotta be that fat, ugly wife of yours. I know I'd sure feel sick all the time if I had to stare at her all day.
Hey, I was actually wondering if I could borrow some money from you. I'm a bit short on this month's rent.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Clint, I didn't know you got it that bad. I swear that fat, ugly wife of yours must be charging you a fortune in food.
Nah, it ain't like that. I actually threw my back out and haven't been able to work for the last month.
Oh man, I hate to break it to you, but I think it's your fat, ugly wife again. Having sex with someone that heavy can't be good for your back.
Well, you know that guy, Dr. Sean Baker. He's the
Yeah,
advocate of
the
that
meat
carnivore
guy.
diet. He marks all these people that were originally in that Game Changers documentary that James Cameron put out.
Yeah.
A ton of them quit before the movie came out, and they had to pull them out of the movie because they were vegan, and because of health reasons they had to quit.
That's just plain not true. The only person who was cut from the film due to health reasons was Tim Sheaf. During the filming, he claimed he had health issues and he quit his vegan diet. But you should know that Tim Sheaf is insane. He drinks his own piss. He goes on piss drinking retreats where he drinks other people's piss, and he also believes the earth is flat. So one dude who happens to be crazy quit the film because he claimed he has health issues. Maybe it was from drinking piss. I don't know, Joe. Most vegans don't drink piss, so I think, the health issues Tim Sheaf had was because of piss drinking, not because of a vegan diet.
Right.
It's an indoctrination movie, and
Yeah.
it's extremely biased, and it's not focusing on all of the various problems that people have. It's only focused on the positive aspects of it and distorting the reality of those positive
Right.
messages, particularly like the strong man who's on a load of steroids.
Yeah, they
You know,
forget that
They
part.
forget that part.
Okay, more ridiculous nonsense and double standards. First of all, Joe, claiming that this film is indoctrination or some form of propaganda, that doesn't actually disprove any of the information in the film. You haven't debunked any of the information in the film. Calling it propaganda is just a form of ad hominem attack that you're using in place of an actual argument. And secondly, yes, there was a vegan strongman in the film named Patrick Baboumian, who was very likely on steroids. Well, guess what? All strongmen are on steroids. Hop Thor Bjornsson, the guy who plays the Mountain in Game of Thrones, who has won the World's Strongest Man, he has openly admitted to steroids. So the best strongmen in the world who eat tons of meat take steroids. So what's the deal with this double standard? If a vegan strongman is strong, oh, it's the steroids. If a meat-eating strongman is strong, oh, it's not the steroids, it's the meat he eats. And this is especially hypocritical for Joe Rogan because Joe himself takes steroids.
People are like, well, you're not a younger man anymore. Duh. Like, people just want you to wither away and die.
So you've juiced.
I take testosterone replacement therapy, and I've done it for almost 10 years. What is it, 49? Yeah, 39.
So Joe Rogan has been taking steroids for 10 years, not for sports performance reasons, but just so he can feel normal, just so he can feel like a normal man, he takes steroids. But when a vegan takes steroids to be competitive in their sports, somehow that's bad, even though all the other meat eaters they're competing against are doing it. How do you live with yourself being such a hypocrite, Joe?
Holy crap! Did you see that guy run the red light? I swear half the people on the road is drunk. But Dad, yous is drunk too. You're drinking moonshine right now. Yeah, that's 'cause I'm not an idiot, dumbass. As long as you're not an idiot, it's perfectly fine to drink and drive.
Also, Joe is ignoring other athletes who are in the documentary, including Lucius Smith, who is a 62-year-old former NFL football player who has been on a vegan diet for 12 years. And as you can see, he looks bigger and stronger than Joe Rogan, despite being 10 years older. So, again, Joe is just lying by omission, claiming that, oh, the only good athletes in the film was that huge steroid-taking guy, the strongman. Well, no, Joe, there were lots of athletes in the film. Not all of them were on a ton of steroids. Lucius Smith is 10 years older than you, but he's in better shape, he's bigger, stronger, and he's been on a vegan diet for 12 years. So what's your excuse for that?
It's very controversial research that came out, but it's a very repeated number of 84% of vegans and vegetarians end up going back to eating meat at some level.
Yeah, right before they die.
Folks, we're omnivores. We're omnivores. We exist better. We are more healthy on an animal and vegetable diet.
Yeah.
So again, Joe Rogan is misrepresenting the findings of that Faunalytic study to paint this narrative that most vegans are just going to end up quitting anyway because the diet is unsustainable. But no, if you actually take a look at the data from that research, most of the people who are ex-vegans or vegetarians, they quit within the first 2 years of following the diet. But if they followed the diet for more than 2 years, chances are they'd follow the diet for a very long period of time. And again, 58% of the current vegans and vegetarians in that study had been vegan or vegetarian for more than 10 years. So contrary to what Joe Rogan is claiming, the Faunalytic study he's referencing just shows how easily sustainable these vegan and vegetarian diets are. Most people who go vegan and vegetarian actually end up sticking to these diets for a very long period of time. And even if that wasn't the case, let's say most people who go vegan and vegetarian quit after a short period of time, well, that doesn't actually prove that these diets aren't sustainable and aren't healthful. There are plenty of healthful and sustainable things that people just end up quitting. Are you going to claim that exercise is unhealthy because most overweight and fat people just quit trying to lose weight and quit their exercise routine? Are you going to claim that quitting cigarette smoking is unhealthy and not sustainable because most people who try to quit smoking end up going back to smoking cigarettes? Of course not. And it's even more ridiculous for you to claim that vegans and vegetarians tend to be less healthy when, if you look at the data, vegans and vegetarians tend to have the lowest risk of ischemic heart disease, diabetes, and certain forms of cancer. And according to the most recent cohort study out of the UK, only the vegan and vegetarian diet group had a statistically significant reduction in all-cause mortality risk. So these diets are sustainable, Joe. Most people who go vegan and vegetarian do actually stick to these diets long term. And vegans and vegetarians tend to be healthier. So again, you're very quickly running out of excuses, Joe.
This idea that you're going to save the world, listen, large scale agriculture is terrible for the environment. It's terrible. Mm-hmm. You want to all of our agriculture, when they talk about greenhouse gases, we talked about this the other day. 9% of all greenhouse gases is because of agriculture. Less than half of that is because of meat. Less than half of that is because of beef.
Okay, so Joe Rogan is cherry-picking his numbers here. He's cherry-picking from the EPA, which isn't accurate when it comes to agricultural emissions. He should be taking a look at the FAO's data, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and they estimate that total emissions from global livestock is 7.1 gigatons of CO2 equivalent per year, representing 14.5% of all anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. This also falls perfectly in line with the data from the UN's latest climate report, where they found a vegan diet could reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by roughly 8 gigatons, and they also found that a vegan diet could produce more food, feed a greater population, while using less land than is currently used today. So not only is a vegan diet good for food security, producing more food for more people using less land, but it also very clearly has a significant impact on greenhouse gas emissions. Joe Rogan is just cherry-picking his sources because the credible sources don't fit his bias.
Elk?
Yeah.
How much is that?
Oh, man.
It's zero.
Yeah.
You have if you just eat elk, you have way less impact on the greenhouse gases than you do if you're a vegetarian. And that's a fact.
Well, Joe, I agree with you. If we were to only eat elk, that would massively reduce greenhouse gas emissions, because if elk were our only food source, we'd quickly eliminate that food source and billions of people would die because they don't have any food. So I don't think that's the best way to go about things. I don't think we should starve ourselves to death by killing off the only animal we allow ourselves to eat.
Right.
If you're eating grain, not only that, you're eating grain, man, you're responsible for a load of death, whether you like it or not.
For sure.
Those monstrous
Rabbits.
combines, those
rabbits,
indiscriminate
deer fawns, mice,
forget about insects.
birds. Yeah.
And then the pesticides, the displacement of wildlife. You're not supposed to have enormous fields filled with corn.
Right.
So this is just a myth. If you take into account land use and the productivity of that land, plant agriculture ends up killing far fewer animals, and grains are the best foods for preventing animal deaths because they produce so many calories on a much smaller portion of land. And Joe is claiming that plant agriculture is so bad because you have to clear out so much natural native wildlife. Well, you have to do the same thing when it comes to animal agriculture. Right now, the US government is planning to kill 45,000 wild horses to make room for grass-grazing cattle. So this argument that Joe is creating is complete nonsense. The fact is, a vegan diet produces more food using less land, kills fewer animals, and creates less pollution and less greenhouse gas emissions. It is more environmentally friendly, it is more ethical. So Joe, again, you have run out of excuses here. So that pretty much covers all of Joe Rogan's arguments against the movie The Game Changers and a vegan diet in general. The fact is, the movie The Game Changers, it was a fine documentary. The science in it was solid. A vegan diet does improve your health. It's fine for athletic performance. There are plenty of great vegan athletes. And again, there are plenty of ethical and environmental benefits to veganism as well. So Joe really has no argument. And if Joe disagrees with any of the information I've provided in this video or any of my arguments here, I'd be more than happy to debate Joe. I could go on his podcast. I know I'm not that big of a deal. I'm not a celebrity or anything, but if Joe wants to have me on, I'd be more than happy to. I'd be fine debating him on any platform. I don't have to go on his podcast. He can come on my channel, do a live stream with me. I'd be fine with that. And if you like this video, maybe consider supporting me on Patreon or through my website. I have some funding perks you may find interesting. If you're looking for clothing, then check out the Vegan Gains store. And if you're looking for online coaching, then check out Quality Gains. He offers customized meal and training programs. Just click the link in the description down below. And as always, keep making those vegan gains.